Hey, welcome to Kotlin Conversations, where we're here at KotlinConf having conversations with some of the amazing speakers here at KotlinConf 2023. I'm Huyen Tuet Dao, and I'm speaking with
Pamela Hill.
Pamela, I'm so excited to have you here speaking with me at KotlinConf. So just to get started, let's dive in. What do you do? And I guess, how did you get started in Kotlin?
So I'm a developer advocate at JetBrains for Kotlin, and I got started as an Android engineer with Kotlin.
Ooh, sorry. And can you talk a little bit about, maybe your involvement in the community? Maybe when did you first become aware of Kotlin, and kind of what took you from, just maybe using it possibly in your Android life to, becoming a part of the JetBrains team?
Yes. So my first exposure to Kotlin was actually a talk by Hadi. It was just a video on YouTube where he was speaking at a conference somewhere doing some live coding, and a friend of mine that immigrated from South Africa to the Netherlands had actually just sent to me and like, hey, you have to see this. And it was so cool to see like Hadi and see the cool technology that Kotlin was even at the early stage. And it was so exciting to see like Kotlin, and like I was coming from a Java background and I was bored. I was sometimes doing back-end stuff. I was sometimes doing a little bit of, I wasn't an Android developer at that stage. I was doing a little bit of web, a little bit of back-end. So I was a little bit bored of Java, and Kotlin came like a breath of fresh air. And I started reading Svetlana's book, Kotlin in Action, and it just, all these, like, my neurons were firing. Yeah. I was excited. And I just, I started asking for projects, Android projects. And then, we had to make this serious decision. Are we going to go Java or are we going to go Kotlin? And we actually asked Rebecca Franks, who's a GDE in Android. And she's like, well, if it's a greenfields project, Kotlin. And I was so excited to hear this because I was, already like kind of rearing for this new language. And so we went Kotlin, and it was such a nice project to work on. I learned so much during that stage, and it was really like awesome it was during the time of when JPEG like components started coming out. Yeah. And it was such an exciting time to be in Android. Because it was a little bit more difficult before JetBrains components and Kotlin. I had tried Android a couple of years before then, and it was with Eclipse, and it was not Gradle. It was not great.
Yeah, those are tough times, yeah.
So I did not enjoy that. I read a very tiny little book because that was all that was available, and it was all like Java, and it was difficult. It was a difficult process to learn how to code in Android. But with Kotlin and with JPEG components and that kind of stuff, it was really amazing. It was such a good developer experience.
And I think that I keep hearing the same story over again, and like obviously in the Android community that's a very common thing that comes up, that it makes life easier and pleasant. Like you said, you were actually excited, and I can totally get the feeling that we love our jobs, but sometimes the tools, the things that we're using in our job may not always be the most exciting thing. Sorry, Java, but Kotlin's nicer, and that really kind of appeals. Is there something that is there a feature that you think really stuck with you, like maybe one of your favorite parts of Kotlin, or maybe just something surprising or new that Kotlin brought to you that really just kind of hit home that, okay, I like this language a lot?
Yes, it was data classes.
Yeah.
It sounds like a strange thing to like. Especially but the first feature that I really liked was data classes. Yeah, I was just like, I never have to write a hash code or equals function in my life, or two-string function ever in my life again.
So you're now part of the JetBrains team, which is kind of awesome, going from being a Kotlin fan to actually kind of working on the team. What is your specialty right now?
So I work with Kotlin Multiplatform, and so that just means mostly focusing on the mobile use case, but also kind of straying into different directions as well.
And it's really fascinating. Like, I mean, you've had a very long career. You've worked on different platforms, and I don't know if maybe in your different kind of travels across the tech space, if there's always been multi-platform solutions, right? That's kind of, so many people have talked about the ideal of write once, run everywhere, and very different platforms have tried different approaches. Is there something about Kotlin multi-platform that you think is different? Because I mean, and I'll give more context to that in that. I kind of have felt very, as someone who's kind of worked in many like kind of multi-platform areas where multi-platform was kind of a goal, an ideal, a hope. A lot of things don't quite pan out, like for different reasons. They might get some traction, but I don't think there's ever been one solution that's like, oh my gosh, this is going to conquer all the platforms. But it feels especially like, and maybe over the last 4 years, ever since with everything that's happened. It feels like KMM has really started to kind of stick with people. I mean, maybe the answer is obvious, but do you agree with that? Do you see that? And why do you think it might be kind of getting some traction?
Yes, absolutely. I think the reason is it's starting to become a really good developer experience. Like Kotlin is a good developer experience. Kotlin multi-platform will also be a good developer experience. We're also, we're starting to work on tools for it, so it's going to be an even better developer experience as time goes on.
What do you think is actually the most challenging part? Because obviously, there's different layers to this, right? As you mentioned, like Kotlin as a language is very pleasant to use, and also there's tooling around that, and presumably taking it to the level of Kotlin multi-platform, where we're kind of like targeting different platforms. How do you? What are there any specific challenges that you think are most daunting or most interesting when it comes to trying to, again, address this multi-platform problem? Like, is there anything specific that you as a team and just in general that you have to focus on to make multi-platform work or be successful?
So in terms of success, I think people are the biggest, and they're not a problem. They're just something exciting, like an exciting challenge, because I think a lot of people come up to us and they're like, oh, but our IS part of the team, they're not feeling so good about this.
I've heard of that a lot, yeah.
And so we have some use cases from our podcast called Drudge Multiplatform, where we've interviewed some folks that are really, they're iOS developers already, and they're keen with the technology. So we're kind of trying to do a lot of advocacy around just getting more iOS developers onboarded. And also, with Compose, multi-platform Compose, is going to become a really exciting story, even more exciting story, with sort of doing the whole stack from like business logic, which was sort of like the selling ground initially, and now it's like, okay, you can do everything in multi-platform.
I think that again, as I already kind of shouted at you, that I feel like that is a common theme, is that it's, especially with the two mobile platforms, Android and iOS, I think that it's not necessarily that there's a rejection, it's just more like it's difficult to ask someone to take up a new technology, and I think in many people that I've talked to in my own personal experience, that is kind of like the one thing that's difficult, right, is to convince iOS that it's worth their time. Is there any kind of common or frequent themes you see in places that they have had successful iOS adoption? Is there something that maybe that us as the Android side can do or say or show that tends to help reach people?
So what I've seen that helps is things like starting small and growing gradually, and also taking up the, I don't know if this is just a South African word, but the schlep work, the work that nobody wants to do.
Oh, yeah.
Like the things that are in common, but the small little tasks that nobody really wants to do. Sometimes it's analytics with funny strings and stuff, or email validation, or writing those kinds of things. So it's starting with small things that nobody wants to do, and the iOS team is happy to offload onto you.
I actually, I got really excited when you said that, because at my previous job at Atlassian working on Trello, we had trouble kind of going, let's say, like kind of full tilt or full bore, I guess, what you say, with Kotlin Multiplatform. But we did get success with analytics, and I never really thought of it that way. I think we just thought of it as like a low risk area. But I like the way that you phrase it, that it's kind of like the drudge work that, you know, and
That's
also
a nicer non-South African word.
Oh no, I think yours is had much more flair. But I think that makes a lot of sense, and also those things kind of make sense also from the fact that you want very strict parity with certain things, like maybe analytics, where it makes a lot of sense to just write, really just write it once, because it's drudge work and it's also something that needs to be, you know, kind of
consistent.
Oh, I really like that a lot. Is there anything right now that you are particularly excited about, whether it's a particular project using KMM or something that you all can talk to me about what's coming up, like what's exciting you right now about KMM?
So we're obviously very excited about Compose Multiplatform. That's part of the KMM story. But we're also excited about what the community is starting to do. And that is open source libraries to really like address key parts of the, you know, that's sort of missing of the story. So we're seeing a lot of open source contributions. Some folks are even, you know, contributing to the compiler, helping out with annotations. Like there's somebody called Rick Clefas, and he wrote some like annotations that would make our Swift interop just that much easier. It's still experimental right now, but it's really helped a lot. And I think it's made the interop so much nicer. And like I think we all appreciate all our open source folks so much, and it's exciting to see when others are excited about what you're excited about as well.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap it up a little bit, but you are giving a talk at KotlinConf. Can you tell us a little bit about what your talk is?
So my talk is actually about exactly that. It's sort of exploring the universe of Kotlin Multiplatform open source libraries. In whatever is in the ecosystem, I just sort of discuss. I talk about networking, persistence. I talk about dependency injection, which is kind of scary because everyone has an opinion and wants to argue, and wants to argue with me. So we're talking about going to production with it. You know, what is necessary to actually go to production with Kotlin Multiplatform. So I'm excited for it. I'm a little nervous, but nervous is good.
Well, I'm sure you're going to smash it. And of course, you have your podcast, of course, A Touch of Multi-Platform. And you can see Pamela very, very often on the JetBrains YouTube channel doing fantastic things. I really want to thank you for taking time. I'm sure you're very busy, both giving talk and kind of being part of the team here. But thank you so much, Pamela, for coming to talk with us.
Thank you. It was amazing.
How else can people find you on the internet if it's not through these things?
So I'm available on Twitter. So it's Pamela A. Hill. I also have a blog, PamelaAHill.com. And I'm also on Mastodon under the AndroidDev.social group, just Pamela A. Hill again.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Pamela. Good luck in your talk tomorrow, and also good luck on the good work in getting KMM across the other side. Get to shine. And thank you all for joining us again, and we'll see you real soon on Kotlin Conversations. Bye.